Hello, everyone. We are into scenario number 5 of the Dunwich Legacy. And this one I always am confused. Is it scenario 5 or 6? And now I'm counting and it is scenario 5. I think it's just sort of like it's the back half, right? So we're finally in Dunwich and it feels like this is more of the campaign, but it really is just half of it.
It's also confusing because it is listed as scenario 4 because the first two scenarios are either 1A or 1B.
That's
So it's either
right.
4, 5, or 6. Not really sure.
That's right. You're right. All right. So we'll talk about the scenario. I've actually played this one fairly recently as well. So let's go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah. So the whole thing about this one is that we are finally in Dunwich. We go to sleep after getting here via train, talking to some folks in Dunwich. We wake up in the middle of the night and some things are going on. And we have to go rescue some people who are going to be sacrificed. So the whole deal to start off is there's a bit of a setup for this scenario. We have these 5 potential sacrifices, and we make a deck out of them depending on whom has been kidnapped, plus these new 2 ones, Zebulon and Earl. So that means that if, for example, you lost them on the train, they're going to be kidnapped. If you didn't manage to rescue them in the first 2 scenarios, they get kidnapped. If you fail that scenario as well, I believe Henry Armitage is kidnapped.
Hmm.
And so all of them are going to be potential sacrifices. So they're going to be put in this little deck over here and shuffled. The next part is we have to go around Dunwich, where there's a lot of duplicate locations that we choose one or the others. I guess we can just reveal them now.
Hmm. And then one of them gets removed entirely as well.
Correct. So there's going to be some very weird connection locations. Um, do you want to go through these locations,
Sure,
or
let's start with the commons, I guess.
yeah,
So I think in the regular one, this one just has these kind of odd connections in general with the rest of the locations.
yeah,
But in general, this is kind of sort of the middle, and then everything else goes around. So there's nothing here, but then let's just go around in a circle, maybe go to
yeah,
the store.
yeah? The store generally has to do it's with store stuff. So this version is pretty awful, honestly. Where you can't gain resources there, that can be pretty bad. And I should mention also, all of these locations will have this free trigger, where if there are no clues them on them, we you draw the encounter card beneath that location. And the way that that is set up is we have these 2 encounter cards,
Hmm.
Key to the Chamber and the Hidden Chamber, and you take 3 more encounter cards from the encounter deck, shuffle them together, and put them underneath the 5 locations because one of
Right.
them is going to be removed.
So the other side here is just another encounter card back.
Yep. So it could potentially be obviously that if there's no clues to use it, you just draw an enemy,
Hmm.
or draw an ancient evils that could advance. That could be also a thing. But ultimately, you're trying to look for these 2 things: the hidden chamber, which puts it into play next to the location that you were at, and the key to the chamber, which you need to unlock the hidden chamber. That's
Yep.
kind of the first phase of this scenario. But yeah, anyway, so the second version of this is you get to look for an item message. Only 3 cards though, which is not very deep. I've never actually found that ever useful.
Yeah, you spend a resource to draw only an item card. I don't think I've ever done that either.
Yeah. All right. Down to British's Brook. This one is pretty standard. Plus, on horror can be a little bit annoying, especially if you have a whippoorwill attached to you or stuff like that. This one can be awful.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's really funny. I'm obviously in True Soul, this does nothing, but in like 3 to 4 play, you could be like, well, I guess like no one else is coming to help you.
Hmm.
Um,
There's
that's honestly
something
pretty funny.
there's something worth saying about these locations now is that they have a fixed number of clues, just 2, whereas the store has per player.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, that we'll talk about that why that sort of matters in a little bit, but yeah, there's just 2 here.
Yep. All right, Burned Ruins. So this one, honestly, this is a very interesting card. I like the theme of this card, where if you fail, you flip a clue to its doom.
Hmm.
So you are making progress in the sense that you're removing a clue from this location so that you can draw the encounter card faster. But also, it's becoming a doom, which could obviously most of the time matters. Maybe it doesn't matter though. So there's some strategy there.
Hmm.
And then yeah, each enemy gets +1 evade. Pretty okay.
Hmm.
Congregational Church. When it's revealed, you search the encounter deck for a human or an enemy. So as a note, very briefly, there are these three humanoid enemies that come in here, but the other humanoid enemies that are going to be appearing are because the Obanians are out to get you. Most likely, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely possible that they're not, but these guys are also here if you did not rescue that guy
Peter
in the
Clover.
second. Peter Clover, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be pretty awful. Congregational Church, the other one, choose and discard a card from your hand, gain 2 resources. It's okay, I would say. Can be pretty decent.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's like you're, I don't want to say you're like paying money to the church or something, or I don't know, they're
Right.
giving you something back. It's kind of odd though that the two are so different. One's beneficial and the other one is, whoops.
Yeah.
And this goes
One of
to
them is
the
like,
village commons, right? So it
right.
ends up, if someone's here, they're like, whoops, and now you have an enemy. Or it just sits there. Because I don't think any of these guys have hunter, right?
Correct.
Yeah, none of the humanoids have hunter.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. House in the Reeds. This one can be pretty debilitating depending on who you are. You cannot play events while you're there. That could be pretty bad. But also, this one's pretty bad because it spawns a Nightgaunt enemy in the village commons, at least. But Nightgaunts are nothing to be trifled with, especially in this scenario.
Yes, and they do have hunter. So
Yeah,
it matters.
it
Yeah.
does matter.
And is this connected to, man, I don't know. It's hard to see with the everything out here, the
Yeah,
connections.
yeah. I can remove some of these.
Yeah, let's do that now. Because there's this weird one-way business where like it has you kind of
Yeah.
going around in a circle. All right, Schoolhouse, we'll do that one
Yeah,
next.
so this one is very interesting. You have to actually investigate to get this clue. So it's a 4 shroud. It's only one clue at least, so you can pump a lot into it if you must.
Mm-hmm.
But does, ignore things like working a hunch and Roland's ability, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then this one is honestly it's fine because it only prevents you from committing skill cards, not all cards. You can still commit cards, just not skill cards specifically. But yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, not bad.
All right. So yeah, here is the ultimate layout. And again, one of these outer locations is going to be removed. So it could look like this, for example, which is like a very weird layout, or it could look like this, which is like very difficult to get, from here to there, for example.
Yeah, you have to go
There's
around
a
in a
lot of
circle.
variability in how the layout of this map ultimately happens.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so in the Return to, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, they did fix this. Like, it's not having this weird one-way business going on.
Correct. I think my hunch is that the this was like an honest mistake about where these things are connected. Like this one, instead of like this one should have had a plus, and this one should have had, or this one should have had the diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's possible that that was the case that happened, but who knows? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it is designed to be this very very weird layout.
Yeah, it does make it a lot harder to. So again, as you say, all these other locations have an encounter card underneath them, and you have to figure out what the best way around to effectively or efficiently get rid of the clues, so you're not wasting time. Because the big challenge in this scenario isn't necessarily completing your task, which is getting all those encounter cards out and finding at least these two, but doing it quickly.
That's right, because every agenda, someone is going to be sacrificed. Um, I'm actually so this is something that I was always unsure. When it says if there are 3 or more potential sacrifices, is it ever possible that there are not 3 or more?
Um, so I guess if you have no, because you can't get both Professor Warren
Yeah.
Rice and Dr. Henry Morgan. So
And I'm thinking also about kidnapped. I mean, it could be that like uh does kidnap happen before this agenda on the back happens? I think so,
it
right?
could, yeah,
When
it
it
starts
advances?
in. Oh, I see. When it advances, choose one. But yeah, it does.
Right. So
That's how maybe.
I guess, but you also put an ally in the deck when this happens too. So
Right,
it
right.
like it doesn't change the number. Anyway, it's kind of weird. Anyway, so you're gonna be sacrificing things by making pulling one from this deck and putting it underneath the agenda deck without looking at it, which is really really thematic. I do like it. It's like, oh, we don't know who got sacrificed.
Hmm.
Um, and
And
indeed, sorry, go ahead.
I say, and when we say sacrifice, we mean they're gone. There's
Absolutely.
that just happens on the first agenda flip. Someone gets, you know, to be killed,
Yep.
and they're not coming back. And it could be one of your signature allies. It could be, uh, I mean, we could talk about the mechanic now, I guess. So we just sort of looked at kidnapped as one of these cards that puts allies that you have in play to that pile of potential sacrifices, and it could be Duke the dog, right? That's kind of the most
Absolutely.
famous thing in this campaign because you have Ashcan Pete who has a signature, but it could be anyone else too. It could be um, Greta Wagner, could be Dr. Milan Christopher. The only thing is that if you end up picking an ally that is non-unique, and this is like again skipping to the end of this scenario, they don't die per se. It's only the unique ones with little star or they have a name that get removed from the campaign.
Correct. Yeah. So either this can be fairly soft. It basically just, it's like a crypt chill where it discards one of your assets, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which can be pretty rough if you're sort of strategizing around a specific asset like guard dog or beacon, for example. Um, or this can be hilarious. I find, um, because I always love the flavor of like your Milan Christopher is getting put into the deck and you don't know exactly if he's going to get sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing you can do to avoid it is just finish the scenario faster. So it
Yeah.
really pushes you forward.
It is kind of weird though that it's only the unique ones that get sacrificed entirely because it kind of, I mean, if you metagame this a bit, it's good to throw the beat cops into this deck because if they're the ones that are randomly selected, like you're stuffing the deck of potential sacrifices with the unnamed allies, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of get off scot-free there.
Yeah, I think mechanically, yes. Thematically, it's hard because there's not one B cop. You can find help from other B cops as well. So it doesn't make sense that they ultimately like are. You cannot put B cops in your deck because this one guy died, right?
Right,
But
it's
yeah, I
true.
understand mechanically. It's like it's kind of weird there.
Yeah, you've got a whole collection of guard dogs at your disposal.
Yep.
No, but yeah, it's a tough test here too. The 4 willpower or 4 agility. I mean, you should try to pass it because if you pass it, then it doesn't do anything, and if you pass it or if you fail it and you don't have any allies, it also doesn't do anything because it doesn't attach this to the agenda. So yeah, it's like it's adding to the. So you always are going to sacrifice probably one, although you could
Yeah,
make it before the first agenda, I
it's technically
suppose.
possible. Yeah,
Yeah, and then but if you have any of these kidnaps, and there's 3 of them attached, that's just adding. So you could sacrifice everyone in the deck.
definitely possible.
Hmm.
All right, so shall we look at the second act?
Yes.
All
So
right,
once you've
so
actually
yeah.
found the hidden chamber and put the key to the chamber in it, you get to advance.
Yep. Once you've entered the chamber, you're going to reveal everything, which is very important because you're going to move all clues in play onto the chamber. This is a very interesting part of the scenario because, as you said, not all of the locations have clue values that scale with investigators. Some of them do, like these 3,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them don't, like these ones. And what that means is that it it effectively does that kind of like boss health thing where it has a base value and then has an additional value that scales per investigator, which I think is really cool. Additionally, on the scenario reference card, you have the cultist token, which can add clues to your location. Which sometimes, maybe in the first half you'd be like, why would this be a bad thing? Although, of course, it blocks your ability to use the free trigger ability to draw the
Mm-hmm.
encounter card. But now you'll see it's more clues that is ultimately on the hidden chamber.
Mm-hmm. And there's, I
Um,
think, a treachery that does the same thing. Is this
yes.
one?
So strange signs. Yeah, it places clues on your location, not from you, but from the token bank.
Mm-hmm.
Reason that being important is because this guy is here, Silas Bishop, and at the last act, you have 2 options. You can either defeat him, or you can get all the clues off.
Yeah.
And he's pretty big. Luckily, he doesn't move, and he cannot make attacks opportunity. So you can kind of go in there, get some clues, maybe get out. Um, so there are some strategies there. Really annoying if a whippoorwill shows up at his location as well.
So it's not too hard to get the clues. There's just gonna be a lot of them. So at base, there's in 2-player, what is it, like 14 or something?
Something like that, because again, it's variable. One of these locations is gonna get removed.
That's right. Oh
So
gosh,
like if this one gets removed, then
that's
yeah,
weird. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And it is so like you mentioned that it's scales based on player count, but in kind of an odd way because in 1 or 2 player, there's still gonna be a lot.
yeah,
And depending on what locations are out here, you might not have to add very many clues if there's more players. So I don't think it's perfect. Like I get what it's trying to do, but imagine that you don't have one of these, like the House and the Reeds or something, and all you have are these other ones, and you have 3 players. You don't really have to add too many clues.
Yeah,
I think it's just
it's
like 2 more.
I'm
And
not like there's so much variability going on that the math is very difficult
yeah.
to really determine like what is the amounts per each player count, but it's very variable,
hmm
I guess.
However, the health on Silas Bishop is not. It's just going to be 6 per
Right.
player,
Which is a
and
lot of health.
that's a lot.
Yep.
What's your go-to? Does it depend on your team, or do you like getting the clues better?
Yeah, it depends on the team. So generally getting the clues is better. Because of the seventh scenario.
Mm.
If you kill Silas Bishop, then and also don't have the Necronomicon spoiler, um, the abominations will show up in Where Doom Awaits, which is can be pretty bad, especially because they're the first turn they're there.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
One of them starts in play.
yep. However, if you do have the Necronomicon thing, then you get a better resolution. I believe R2, like it doesn't you don't get the abominations, I believe. And also uh Seth Bishop just dies instantly. I think that's the one. Is that right?
I don't remember. Yeah, there's one where he shows up with like some of his health is like already taken out in the seventh
Yeah.
scenario.
I honestly don't even remember which one. I guess we'll get to that when we get to
Yeah.
Rare Doom Awaits. Um but yeah, so there is a way to get through it by killing Silas Bishop while you have the Necronomicon at least.
hmm
Um
Or maybe you're supposed to get the clues, right? Because you advance if there's no
Oh,
clues.
that's right. Sorry. Yes, my bad. So yeah, Silas Bishop, if you kill him, just regardless, you put him out of his misery.
That's
And
R1.
that is what spawned those abominations. But yes, if you get the clues and also don't and also have the Necronomicon, then you get restored Silas Bishop, which is a different thing. And I don't know what that is on the top of my head, but yes, it affects Where Doom Awaits.
Yeah, which is cool. I like that there's multiple pathways and one that's kind of hard to pick off.
Yeah.
But as far as actually completing any of these, I find that I mean, again, it depends on the team, but dealing with Silas Bishop is tough either way because, yeah, let's just pretend it's connected to, this location. What are you doing? You're going to go in, get one clue, and leave? Like, that's
Right.
your whole turn for several rounds?
Right. Yeah, I think it really relies on if you can be a clover that has great clue compression ability, then it becomes a lot easier with one action.
hmm
Um, the thing that happened to me is I was able to get I think it was something like 12 clues with the archaic glyphs.
Oh my
Obviously,
gosh. Well, okay.
because I mean, obviously, it's a good card, but this scenario is very specifically broken by that card because all of the clues are on one location.
Yeah, wow.
Um,
Yeah, if you're
right.
planning ahead on trying to Rex Murphy, right? Really good here.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. The other thing is that Silas Bishop, right, so we can't make text opportunities, so you're free to go in there and do whatever you want as long as you can get out. So getting an extra action, having something like Pathfinder in play is really
Yep.
helpful.
Or
But
being Ursula, for example, that you can go in there and investigate as a free action is also very useful.
and then probably the number one would be Trish.
Yep.
You come
Because
in
there's an
here,
enemy there always.
there's an enemy here, but you can automatically evade him.
That's also true.
And then everyone can come in and spend their whole turn. So
Yep.
uh,
Basically, if you have a surefire way to evade Silas Bishop, the last part of this becomes very easy.
mhm. If not, it might be a little bit of a slog. Honestly, it might be coming in and out. I think it's. I remember it being attached to. It might be the Schoolhouse, or maybe it's one of the Return twos that happened in my last playthrough,
Mm-hmm.
where you go out and it was like, oh, it's the event one. It's you can't play events. Yeah, this is the one that got attached.
Wow.
So going in, doing whatever to get clues, and coming out, and then you can't play any events is really awful. Like I had Ward of Protection or something, and it's like, nope, can't play it.
Imagine if you got it attached to Bishop's Brook, where you can't enter if someone else is there, so someone else can force you to stay in the chamber.
Oh no. Well,
You're the sacrifice now.
all right. That's how this one goes. Like I said, it's not too hard to accomplish this. It's like I feel like it's going to happen anyway, since The number of agendas, there's 3. They have a lot of time on them.
A lot of time.
6,
Yep.
6, and 7. That's way too much time for this. But
Yep.
you don't want it to even to go to agenda 3 at all. If you can
Hmm.
do it in the first 12 rounds, then you're good.
Yeah, I believe if you resign and or everyone's defeated, or the final agenda, because that's everyone resigned, everyone is sacrificed, I believe. Yeah. No matter who's in the deck, everyone gets sacrificed.
Wow.
So yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Before we talk about the encounter cards, let's talk about the interlude because it also relates to exactly this question.
Absolutely. So we will get to see who got sacrificed. It's Zebulon. So everyone who is not sacrificed, aka still in the deck by the time the scenario is over, you get to have them join your party. Either that being people who maybe you've lost on the way, like if you dropped Francis Morgan in the train, you get to have him back. Or if you never got him in the first place. But also 2 new people. So these guys, they are the other stats, if you will.
Yeah. We got Earl. Earl is pretty good.
Yeah, if you can use Earl's ability, because his ability is the one that can happen the most often, since defeating an enemy and discovering the last clue are like, you got to get a lot of work. But just evading, that can be one action. Like having a free draw card on that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like pickpocketing with some soak
Exactly.
and a stat boost.
Yeah.
Zebulon?
And I've always found Zebulon to be pretty good for me. The +1 willpower is basically good for everyone because it's a very defensive stat. A lot of skill tests. Sorry, a lot of treacheries test that kind of skill. Very good horror soak for people like Roland or Zoe. And like I would hope that you'd be able to succeed those willpower tests on the treachery cards. It lets you, get something out of your rotting remains or crypt chills and stuff like that.
Yeah. Plus, you pair that up with like Holy Rosary 2 and you get lots of benefit for doing the same thing.
Yep.
Right. So everyone ends up having in your team probably at least one of these allies. So this is a great campaign to have charisma. I mean, it came out in this campaign, right? So
absolutely.
You'll be adding some soak, and you won't be probably getting all of them, but if you do get the right ones, and I have to tell you, the last time I played this, I had 3 sacrifices, and it was Armitage, Rice, and Morgan. So
wait, so you didn't get the powder?
I didn't get the powder.
Wow.
It was exactly those 3.
I've never seen that happen.
So if you get any of those 3, you get rewarded also with the powder of Ibn Ghazi.
Yeah. For everyone who survived, aka everyone of the 5 here that survived, you get a clue on the powder of Ibn Ghazi, which doesn't mean anything until the next scenario. But it's good. Do it.
We'll talk about that one next time, but I have to say it is possible to not get this at all.
Indeed. Well, of course, maybe if everyone died, that also is the case. But if those 3 specific people died, that is also very funny.
Yeah, it was exactly those 3. I think you also just you got to pass one of these kidnapped, otherwise you do end up losing a bunch, right?
Or not have an ally.
Right, or don't have an ally. Well, I don't recommend that though. Allies are good, especially since they're giving them to you at this point. I will also say, like, this is scenario 5, right?
Yes.
Remember that. It's nice to have these guys added to your deck for the final 3. In some other campaigns, when they give you these kinds of story assets, you don't get them for very long. So, of course, you might have lost them in the previous scenario, but getting them back right away is really good.
Yep.
All right. What else to talk about? I guess the encounter cards that are new.
Yep. We can also do the scenario reference card if you want.
Oh, yes, let's do that.
I mentioned the cultist. So yeah, the skull is -1 for each location in play with no encounter card underneath it. Notably, that'll be a -1 to start because the village commons does not have one. But ultimately, that will get to -4 very quickly. Always fine. Tablets -2 if you're at a hidden chamber. Reveal another token. The hidden chamber is cursed. It would seem.
Yep.
And the elder thing, if you fail, place a doom on the current agenda -3. That's pretty bad.
Yeah. Remind me again, is that from cheating?
That is from cheating and or taking the Necronomicon.
Okay. Do you get 2 of them if you took the Necronomicon?
If you do both, yes.
All right. Good to know.
Good to know. Obviously, it doesn't say it can advance, so if you do this in the witching hour, go nuts. But
sure. All right. Ancient Evil's in a token, something that they've returned to usually in like the last scenario of a campaign, not scenario number 5.
Right. but it is consequences for your actions,
Mm-hmm.
if I may.
All right, so we've looked at kidnapped already, and there's
Yeah.
three of these again. It's just something you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Psychopop song, which is very interesting. I always thought that it was part of the Eager for Death set, but it's not.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, this one's fun. Um, have we talked? We haven't talked about this card yet, have we?
Not in this campaign, no.
Right. Anyway, so it's always really fun to have this card because you get to look around and be like, who wants to take 3 damage? And it also surges, so that doesn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough choice. It can be, but yeah, it's pretty brutal.
I like the art as well.
Art is cool.
I will say that I've among many cards in this game where I've like interpreted the art. I thought this was like okay, so what it is actually is like a guy who's like laying down or something, and then you got a whippoorwill
Yeah.
on top of him.
Right.
So I thought it was like on the left, it looks like some guy who's got like a sheet over his head, kind of like the kidnapped art, maybe.
Oh,
And then
wait.
like the head, I thought was like his arm or something. I mean, it's kind of weird looking when you think about it now. And then like the whippoorwill was like perched on his hand, like he was,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, it is a weird perspective that he's lying down. So
right. That was the part that threw me off. But
that's so funny.
anyway, strange signs we talked about already. It's an intellect test, which is not going to be something most of your investigators will pass.
Yeah.
But
Ultimately, I think this card it's fine. Like adding 1 clue or 2 if it's a player isn't the worst thing in the world. And it's not for every point you fail by either. So it's fine. It kind of just like you lose an action.
Yeah, and there's not as many clues in that you have to worry about so much. So the other part is if you draw this in that second part of the scenario, it does nothing if you are sitting on some other location, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, on the other hand, you have these guys, which are helpful, maybe.
Yeah. I like them. These guys are nice. Every time I draw them, I'm like, yes, please.
You got a pretty weak enemy. It spawns somewhere else. You get to
Yeah, they don't
decide.
even spawn with you.
Yeah.
There's no urgency with them. So it's like, hey, go get me for a free clue if you want.
The retaliate's a little spooky, but it's only 3 fight.
Yeah.
Rotting Remains, it's outside of its encounter set.
Yeah, this is definitely what they were talking about when they were like, yeah, we wish we like split up a lot of the core set and counter sets more often because having Rotting Remains here by itself is like, well, we need them in the encounter, but without the rest of the cards. So
Yeah, I think this would be really tough if you had Frozen in Fear in this deck too.
Yeah.
Okay, these next two are part of a set that we haven't seen yet because they're in the next one as well, I think.
Yep. They're the Dunwich set.
More ally things, I guess.
Indeed. Unhallowed Country, I found that sometimes it can be meh, but sometimes it's like, this ruins my entire day. For example, there are some. Isn't there? I mean, there's if this attached, if this you lose your Leo DeLuca action, for example, that could be pretty bad. But I'm trying to remember. There was a situation where this happened to me, and I was like, I hate everything, but I can't remember what that was.
Speaking of Leo, I played Leo Anderson in this one, and it was really annoying. I said, "Wait a minute." But
well, they still have soak at least.
They still have soak, and you should be able to pass the tests at the end of your turn.
Yeah.
Next one, Sword and Silent.
Yeah, everyone takes a horror at the end of the round. It's very rare when the agenda advances. I feel like a lot of people forget that, so they kind of leave it there and like, oh right, this thing is still here.
Yeah. Pretty soft.
Yeah, I'd say so. It kind of just encourages you to move around. It's like an edge of the earth treachery.
Yeah, I agree. But it's not too bad. Like you can plan around that in this one better maybe than the next one.
Yeah, in the next one it can be pretty brutal where this appears.
Yeah. All right, the next ones are the Whippoorwills. They come back for a lot of fun. I don't think that they, other than the Psychopomp song with Eager for Death, I don't think the Whippoorwills are that big of a deal in this scenario.
No, especially in the first act, you should be moving around a lot trying to find everything. The only bad part to play around is at the last act when you're in the chamber. If they come into the chamber, then it can get pretty bad if there's like 2 or even 3 of them, obviously.
Dynamite Blast.
Indeed, solves everything.
Yeah. Um, Eager for Death. It's a good card. I think it's a fun card. I don't think it's too tough either. But again, this is one, two, three, four willpower tests so far.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well.
yeah. This card is basically the same as in when it was in the university scenario.
Mhm. We have a central location, so hunting
We
night
do.
gaunts are here to play.
Yep, they are back. A lot of health. This is where most of the health is going to be in the scenario,
Hmm.
and or maybe these guys. But
Yeah. And Ancient Evils, I think it's as a relevant encounter set just because we talked about how completing it before the agenda actually advances, or at least the second one, is pretty big. So,
yep.
all right. And you might probably have these guys, and, they're annoying, but again, none of them have Hunter, so you can probably leave them behind if you need to.
Yeah, I found that these guys are actually easier in this scenario than the house always wins because of the fact that they don't have aloof, and so they're not walking around everywhere. And in this scenario, they just spawn on you, so just deal with them immediately, and you're fine.
Hmm. Plus, you should
Whereas
have
in the
some weapons at this point to deal with them better.
yeah, and they're only 2 health, so easy
Yeah.
peasy.
Yeah, they're only 2 health. All right. Anything else to say here?
I mean, I think it's pretty standard. Like, kind of going around, getting clues, getting the encounter cards, get in the chamber, do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the fun of it is like, can you do it faster than the agenda is advanced?
Yeah. All right, let's go over to our ratings then.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's continue. And when we first talked about replayability, I think we kind of touched on how the map can be very different, the locations can be very different, which location the hidden chamber is connected to makes things really different. So I would say like this is probably the best of the ones we've seen so far as replayability goes, in terms of just can it be different?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be wildly different between scenarios, but not so wildly different that it doesn't feel it feels like there's large swings on it being too easy or too difficult either way. Um for me, the sort of losing one of the locations and having duplicates of every location adds a lot to the replayability, as well as the different outcomes that can occur on who was sacrificed, whether or not you killed Silas Bishop or got the clues. There's a lot of things going on there, as well as, of course, the randomness in finding the key and the chamber and which encounter cards you get them at. So like maybe they're the last two you find, maybe they're the first two. Um, so I think with that, it's like very replayable. I don't think it's not like the scenario entirely changes between playthroughs. You're still doing the same thing, getting clues, get to the chamber. But in that space, it can vary a lot. So I think I would probably go with a 4 for replayability.
Okay, let me remember how to do this again. Four is this one.
Correct.
Good. Yeah. I actually was gonna put the four as well. I will just sort of comment on the second question here. Is there more to enjoy? It's not quite a different scenario though. So we've seen other
Yeah.
uh, campaigns that shake things up quite a bit. If there's like two different versions of it, where you really feel like you're playing like kind of a parallel version of that scenario or something, it's still pretty much the same thing. It's just which one did you get? Did you get the one that's a little bit easier, a little bit harder? But it doesn't feel like you're playing something different.
Yeah, this one is the first one that I've always felt, along with the train scenario, of course,
Mm-hmm.
that the map feels like it's different every time. But that's like the main thing that feels different. And they do that where the map feels different every time a lot better in the future scenarios. And so there's things to improve on. But as to sort of like starting out with the variability of the map, there's still a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, I will be critical in that I do think that the different locations are a little bit too different from each other, and that can matter quite a bit. And I wish they were just, I wish that one of the locations wasn't a bad thing and then the other version was a really good thing. I wish they were a little more even about like either spawn a night gun or spawn a humanoid. That would feel a little bit more balanced in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, fairness.
Yeah, I think that there are like I would, to be critical about the scenario. I think that there are some pain points in this scenario when it comes to randomness. Um, Mainly whether or not, like, if you get unlucky with where the key and the chamber are, if you get a little bit unlucky with the locations, that could be pretty brutal. Um, as well as, getting lots of ancient evils to make sure that you lose a lot of allies pretty quickly. There are a lot of random elements that you don't really have a way to mitigate. You just kind of have to take them.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it is just a, scenario where the agenda has so much time that you're basically assured to finish it, and it's just about how quickly can you do it. Um, so I think in that sense it's fair because the scenario gives you a lot of play to be able to do things. So, especially it gives you the enemy that gets you a clue for free. So it allows you the tools to advance as quickly as you can. Um, but there is still that veil of randomness. I think I'm going to give it a 3 for fairness.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best, but it's also like pretty decent.
Yeah, I do feel like the clues are like the least of your concerns, right? They did
Yeah.
a good job, I think, in this scenario where that part doesn't matter so much. Like you have enough um, play, as you say, to pick up the clues no matter what. It's really going to be about the amount of time it takes to get around the map.
Yep.
And you probably will figure out after not too long, don't pull the encounter card underneath the location with your last after your third action or something.
Right.
Just don't do that. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on this one too. Right down the middle. Well, I guess it's a little bit more than down the middle, but yes. All right. Balance. Does this one favor any types of investigators?
Maybe a little bit about moving, because there are some locations you need to get to, and going around as quickly as you can means that you get the key in the chamber potentially faster. If you have free movement tech, then going into the chamber, and getting out while Silas Bishop is in there is also easier. But other than that, it's a pretty standard like clue enemy scenario, and it's just about speed. So if you have good tempo, you can probably do pretty well.
Yep, I agree with that.
I'll give it a 4. I think it's pretty balanced.
Yep, same here. The enemies are not particularly noteworthy. I mean, other than the fact that they help you, but there's not much there that you haven't seen before, right? In
Yep.
fact, just the new enemies are the ones that are the servant of many mouths. So yeah, and you can pretty much do anything you want as long as you don't get stuck in the locations where you can't play events or assets or whatever else. So,
Yep.
but that's not going to shut things off, I don't think. Experience.
All right. Yeah, I think this one, obviously, coming off the train, it's really hard to compare to the train. But I do really like the because this game is both about, you know, the game responding to the degree of success that you have during the scenario, and also the game responding to the degree of failure during the scenario. And I love this scenario because it does that in the how many people are or sacrificed, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, you can win the scenario pretty easily, but it's all about how quickly can you do it, and how many people can you prevent from being sacrificed. There's a lot of cool like it almost feels like you are stressed even in the first agenda, and you're like, we need to kick up the tempo, someone is going to get sacrificed, so the less we can have that happen, the better. So it always kind of pushes this stress at you even in the early parts of the scenario, and I really like that. I'll give the scenario a 4.5 for experience. I really love that, and I also just love going around Dunwich and just like being in this space. I think it's also really cool.
That's true. I will admit that the first time I played this, I didn't really understand that all of our allies were going to get sacrificed. Like I know it says the pool of potential sacrifices, but I didn't really get it. I didn't have that pressure in the way that after I played, I was like, oh, they weren't kidding around. So ever since I've played it the first time, I have enjoyed it more because of that reason, and I sort of understand what is supposed to happen. And I don't know. I don't know if there was anything that they could have done to make that more apparent. Maybe they could tell you to reveal the first one and say that's been sacrificed or something, or I don't know,
Mm.
something where I didn't. Maybe it's because there was these two out of play areas. It was the deck of potential sacrifices, and then puts things underneath the agenda that I didn't understand. That underneath the agenda actually meant no, it's gone, it's gone forever.
Right.
However, that's nothing against the scenario. I think that's just my misread of the of just paying attention to the mechanics too much. So yeah, I think the gameplay loop is good. It's pretty normal, I think, as we talked about. I don't particularly care for the last part where sometimes it just feels like all you're doing is going into the chamber and running away. Like, what is the fiction that's supposed to be going on there? Like, you go in, look around, and then you're like, oh, Silas has seen me. I better get out of here. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. But it's still pretty good. I think it's a pretty, as far as Dunwich goes, um, it's kind of the do as much as you can scenario.
Yeah.
Like Midnight Masks, it's just maybe not as obvious that that's what's going on until till the end.
Yeah. I think it's like an inverted Midnight Mask where Midnight Mask is how many can you get, and this one is like how many can the game not get? I guess if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I like this one a lot. I do feel like after I'm going to give it a 4. Um, after the I don't know, having many more campaigns under my belt, I'm a little bit more down on this one than I used to,
Hmm.
mostly because sometimes you just go in with a really good deck or someone like Trish or maybe Archaic Glyphs or something, and you're like done pretty quickly, and you're like, well, that was
Hmm.
that scenario,
Yeah,
and that's kind of a downside.
yeah. This one definitely feels like it. This scenario feels like it is well established at the moment that the game was released, or I should say, the scenario came out. That it felt really like perfectly balanced with all of the cards and all of the card pool to be like that perfect like amount of tenseness. And now that the card pool has grown, people have only found more ways to kind of exploit the weaknesses of the scenario. Um, but yeah,
Speaking of exploit weakness, would be good here too, right?
I think so. I guess you could fight the guy and what you would deal 3 damage
Automatically evade.
if you can get his 7 evade to 0, right?
Or fight, right?
Oh, I guess so, right? You do either. Is that what happens?
Mm-hmm. You could
Okay,
you could fight if you get the difficulty down to 0.
that's true.
He's only got 3. Not impossible with all the
Yes.
cool tricks in the game now.
You can also just commit stunning blow. That also works.
Yeah, that also works. Yeah. There's definitely ways to get through this where it's a little bit less tricky, but it's still a good scenario.
Yeah.
Like many of the Dunwich ones, though, it does have some early design rough edges, and that's fine. We're not going to hold it against it for that.
Yep.
All right, we're going to talk about the Return 2 now. So if you haven't played the Return 2, or you just want to move on to another video, thanks for watching. But yeah, we'll go on to the Return 2 now. Okay, we are back to talk about the Return 2. And the first thing to note is, well, there are different locations, but they also have their connections that are kind of restored to something that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I think that this is basically what they meant to do. Like this location basically had the wrong symbol. Now it points this way instead of pointing this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yep. So we're going to look at all of these are the 7 new locations, and they're kind of rough.
Yeah,
Cannot.
it's interesting because it's a draw or resource action. So you still get upkeep if you end up staying here.
Mm-hmm.
And like on the first turn, I guess it's depending on play styles. Maybe you are the type of investigator where you're like, oh, I want to spend the first turn drawing some cards or taking some resources to be able to play my stuff. It basically ultimately just incentivizes you to move away from the commons.
Yeah, there's the other thing that's interesting is that I've noticed in Dunwich there's a lot of locations with no clues on them,
Right.
and they, not in this scenario, but they tend to make you want to move out of them fairly quickly. So
Hmm.
this is even more incentivizing that.
Yep.
All right, what else? Let's go around maybe this way.
Sure. Test 4 foot fail, take 2 damage. That's pretty
Su-
tough.
surprise!
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
This one's
Successfully investigate, take a damage. Wow, that's rough.
yeah, this is kind of rough for most of the clue getters that are low on health, but you can I don't know, play Look What I Found and then Working a Hunch or something.
Yeah, play Look What I Found or get clue compression to
Hmm.
avoid the damage as much as possible because it's not per clue, it's just once you investigate.
Yep, deduction level 2 takes
Yep.
care of that.
This one is hilarious. You just the kidnapper is in the church. Um I actually like this one. It's fun. Because I think getting more of the kidnapped cards into play makes the scenario more interesting.
Yes, I agree with that. It's rough, but if you should be able to pass that test with one of those two stats. It's willpower or agility for,
Right.
but you're just gonna have to commit things to it. That's what the kind of card it is.
Yep.
This is the one I got stuck at.
Oh no. That's tough.
This is the one.
Obviously,
Yeah,
like I like maybe if this is the last location you go to, it's not so bad because maybe you have all the assets you need. But yeah, I can see that being pretty bad.
yeah. It was the one that was connected to the hidden chamber. So like, it was really. I wanted to play. Maybe it was like a fingerprint kit or something like that,
Hmm.
and then be able to
Yeah.
move in and investigate. And like having to move out, play your asset, then move back in, and then move again was just really annoying.
Yeah, that sounds pretty rough.
Yeah. This is
All
fine.
right. Yeah, this is cool actually. Like, I like it because again, it doesn't spawn on you because you draw it, so it will
Hmm.
spawn somewhere else. So it's kind of like you get another free clue for free, kind of.
And it's only once because there should only be one clue here, although there could be more later.
Right. I
Hey,
love
that's
this one.
that's nice.
Yeah. Thanks, Gabe. It's a little annoying you can't get there on the first turn anymore, but it's nice.
Hmm, that's funny. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Again, I think that some like I like this one because it's like okay, so to me, I like the interesting thing where it's like, oh, we're playing the return to. This one is good, but it could also be the other one where you can't gain resources. So it's like there is some risk in going here thinking that you're going to get a good thing out of it.
Hmm.
Um,
So I
but
know that you usually, when you play Return 2 for like the first time, you play with the rule where you just always play with the new stuff. I do that
I
too.
yeah, I did that. I do that for the channel mostly. In regular play, I kind of still do the whole shuffle thing,
Mhm.
so there is still that randomness. But yeah, if you get all of them at the same time, then of course you know what they're going to be. But
Right. All right. The other change is we have two copies of Hired Gun, and I believe one of them starts in play.
if you yes, if you have a bone to pick, of
Yeah.
course.
All right.
One location is not connected to the village commons, so that is these two or this one.
So this guy says that each criminal. These. It's kind of funny. His text has nothing to do with him other than the hunter thing, but it's like
Right.
just more rules text. That if he's in play, then everyone else, all the other criminals get hunter, which I think is super important for this scenario.
Yeah,
And then each copy of Hunted Down gains peril and surge, which is also tough.
that's pretty tough. Yeah.
4 health enemy
Um,
on the board, in addition to the. Hey, he has the same stats as the Night Gaunt, doesn't he?
that is true.
Is he actually a Night Gaunt in disguise?
Oh, maybe that's it. There are his Nightgaunt brothers are still in here, but
Yep. All right, a few more
oh,
enemies that are tough, I think is good.
yeah, I think it's a like having yeah exactly like having more pressure on the enemy side. I think makes this scenario more interesting for sure.
Any other changes to this one? I don't.
Um, yeah, so we do have the thing where if Naomi's crew is shuffled in, you cannot put like they no longer get put underneath the locations.
Right.
So a guy can't randomly pop out underneath the general store. Um, which like I think it helps because it means that encounter card draw is more reliably going to be something that you don't have to deal with right now.
Hmm.
Um, it could still be a whippoorwill, it could still be a servant of many mouths, but that is not an issue that is urgent as a guy popping up that's going to deal you with damage.
Remind me in the original and in this one too, when you end up entering the hidden chamber, if there are encounter cards that are still out, do they just stay face down?
They do just stay there, correct?
Hmm. Okay. Well, I guess that's more likely that you draw the enemies rather than them being stuck underneath some cards then.
That is also true.
All right. How do you like the return to? Is this one that you've enjoyed as an improvement?
I think it adds a little bit of variety.
Hmm.
I like the new layout. Okay. I like the original one because it's so weird, but that's just me. this one makes more sense, and so I like that as well. It still does have this thing, for example, if the church is gone, there's like this sort of like prong shape it has.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like if you have this location gone, it's no longer like really impossible to get to the church, for example. And like if you have this location gone, it means that the store is now very inaccessible in order to get you have two kind of endpoints here as well. So
That's right.
the map itself stays very variable
Mm-hmm.
depending on which locations are removed.
Yeah, but no more one-way streets in Dunwich.
Exactly. But yeah, otherwise it's just some variability there. I like the hired guns, and yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing we should probably maybe, I don't know, rate or whatever, but like, does the return to improve, add variety, or does it fix something that was broken? I think it's a little bit of all of those, but mostly it's the variety, I think.
Yeah, I think that this one also lends itself to, at least in the first portion of the scenario, it bumps up the difficulty a little bit.
Yeah.
Mainly with the village comes and the hired gun. So that's a good thing that the return to can do.
Yeah. All right. I think that's about it for the scenario. It's a good one. It's, again, Dunwich as a whole, looking back on it, has a few things that are, they improve upon this type of scenario again in the future too. But I think this one to me is like the standout for the whole campaign, other than the train scenario.
Yeah, for sure.
There are some consequences for how this one ends up in terms of the next scenario. So we'll be talking about that one next.